is an industry leader coming today from Lyon in France. And I'm talking about Jean-Marie Zirano, who is here with us. Jean-Marie helps B2B SaaS startups and more mature vendors accelerate their go-to-market strategies. He helps users make the best of software solutions they adopt and helps them choose the right ones to create value. With more than 30 years of experience in our industry, including board-level positions with B2B software players, JM offers a pragmatic vision for product strategy, strategic marketing, and analyst relations in domains like digital transformation, customer experience, innovation management, business and RT architecture, enterprise architecture, IT portfolio management and governance, risk and compliance. We're talking to a real expert here. Jean-Marie, what a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your wisdom and expertise with our global audience today.
Thank you, Jose, for having me. So, thank you for having me, and thank you to the audience for attending this event. What I wanted to do is really to browse a bunch of questions that come up so often when we meet prospects and customers. And these questions, I think, the answers to which will help demystify enterprise architecture and the relationship between the vendors and the users. Of course, I'm representing Axeliance, which is one of the vendors. But I think what's interesting is to share the experience of meeting prospects and customers, share their questions, share the answers, and then discuss whether this helps better understand what has to be done, how the market evolves, and how the market inherits from the past. So, going straight to the next question. First question that people ask us is, well, you know, there are new tools that come up in the market, and these new tools tend, of course, to be cloud native. However, well, there seems to be a difference in demand between the cloud versus on-premise products. And this difference is a problem for most of the customers. Some are still attached to, you know, desktop tools, and to these tools was still linked and tied to an on-premise pricing model too. So why can't people simply use subscription pricing for on-prem products? How come it's so difficult to change? That's a very practical and frequent question from customers. And I have to say, in terms of answer, that, you know, there has been a clear change both from customers and vendors in habits on this topic. Customers tell us that cloud native products speed up the online access to design and architecture related activities for all roles involved. And correlatively, they also tell us that roles diversify at light speed in these activities, particularly for business users who are more likely to drive changes from the business end, which is important for enterprise architecture. So on the other side, vendors' cloud products are today much more easily accessible to these new roles. Just need to log in and get access to the tool without any, you know, burden, and you know, without the pain of installation, deployment. So it's very easy to include new users, and particularly business users who may not be used to using these tools. So they see all these usual barriers falling, you know, the barriers attached to desktop products, and they can quickly access to online products that are, you know, in the cloud. So the fact is that desktop products remain bound to this on-premise model, and the pricing model transformation is much slower for them, right? So in short, the message we want to convey with this issue of new versus old, well, being Axelians and having this GenMine model product, which of course is cloud native, is that cloud product is really an opportunity to shorten the path to subscription pricing and to expand the coverage, which is much more important, to expand the coverage to business roles much more quicker than usual. Second question, which comes often, is something that customers ask in different forms, but basically they read what analysts say and they remember that at some point in time, some were saying, well, the EM market is dying. The problem is it's been dying for more than 20 years and still it is a very lively market. So we could hear that already 20 years ago. So they ask us, what are you seeing at the moment? Well, why do you think that is that some people are saying the market is dying and others are saying it's very lively? Well, the simple thing to see, which is obvious on the market, is that there are newcomers to the market and of really diverse origins. And that's funny that this market has been dying for more than 20 years and it's still alive. Well, actually, this market remains very active. We have other brilliant players around in this conference that demonstrate it. We see on one end of the market, we see some consolidation going on. I noticed that Linux in the previous presentation mentioned Signavio, which was acquired by SAP. So that's an interesting fact that SAP, such a company, is interested by a player that like Signavio and acquires it. So there is acquisition on the market, there is consolidation on the market, and there are also new entrants joining in the market with interesting and innovative approaches. Now, actually, the thing is that customers may not directly think in terms of EA market, right? They rather think in terms of use case. I mean, the situations and the issues that they are facing, and whether or not vendors come up with the right approach and solution to their issues is what they are interested in. So when you look at the market, you may want to look, when you're a potential user or prospect, you may want to look at it in terms of innovation. What players provide what, and does that match my need, what I need to do when the problem I need to solve? So one interesting direction that has been taken lately is the fact of supporting the analysis of customer behavior. So when you're a business user, the value is going to be in providing your own customers more value. So you're interested in understanding the customers and understanding what customers are sensitive to and understanding their behavior and understanding correlatively what you may have to change in your organization to better adapt to their needs or their pains. And when you have vendors that provide journey mapping, for example, either customer journey mapping, which is also applicable to employee journey mapping, and that you can connect this to process analysis, you have a nice combination of two things that much more easily allow you to understand what pain, what customer need is linked to what asset, organizational or IT asset in your organization to change the situation. So customer journey mapping is a nice recent addition to the EA offering today. Second interesting aspect is process mining, and by and large, all what allows you to better understand the performance of the process based on facts. So when you can collect information about the processes, you have a better understanding of what goes on well and what can be improved. So, right, process mining is an interesting addition to the EA tools, whether they come as an embedded capability or whether players rely on partnerships to provide process mining in addition to process analysis. Third interesting direction the market is taking is also circulating documentation across stakeholders. As I said before, stakeholders are more and more numerous in roles, in responsibilities, and one interesting trend, particularly in agile work organization, is that the requirements are evolving pretty fast. And that, well, in conjunction, the documentation needs to react nearly as fast as the requirements evolve. So, however, as you know, nobody has ever wanted to spend time building documentation, right? That's a pain. So some players, and this is what we do at GenMyModel, with the GenMyModel, we have made the documentation process totally silent and effortless. While the designers design, the system generates an online documentation set that can be integrated with whichever tool of choice you'd like to use to integrate your documentation. So these are the directions that the market is taking, and they demonstrate that the market is not so dying as some may want to say. Third aspect, which pertains to the type of tools we're talking about. Some tools are very much drawing and modeling based, while others are more analytical. For example, Linux, which was the previous presenter was from Linux, and obviously Linux offers an analytical, data-driven approach, which makes sense, for example, when you have a SAP project where you need to go and dig into SAP to better understand how SAP is used, what assets are embedded in SAP for you to understand where your IT system is going and how you're going to deploy that to users. So some tools are more drawing and modeling oriented, while others are more analytical. So Axeliance, that I represent here, has a strong focus on drawing and modeling, actually, while, again, others may not have that. Why that? So do we need to have a drawing tool? Does the tool we're going to choose need to be drawing necessarily, or can it be different? Is it linked to personas, etc.? And this market turn was accelerated and changed, particularly when players offered, table entry type of data entry for users to avoid the drawing step. Well, it depends where you come from, what your past is as a vendor. And at Axeliance, basically what we wanted to do initially is to support standards as simply as possible. It started with UML 2.5 a few years ago, which is strongly diagram based, as you know, and the platform extended, because it is possible to do so, extended its offering to other notations such as BPMN or Archimate, etc., which is strongly drawing based. But the nice thing is that when you offer a drawing oriented type of tool, you can come with innovations such as, for example, predictive diagramming. You're in diagram, you're diagramming, and the system knows what you are going to do next, meaning knows what is more likely to come next when you're at a certain step in your diagram. That's what I call predictive diagramming, and offers you the features that naturally leads you to the next link or the next object you want to put in your diagram. Another nice feature when you're diagramming based is to offer cross-notation navigation. So that's what we do with the GenMyModel. You can navigate from any type of notation to another, like from Archimate to BPMN or from BPMN to UML. You're not locked into a notation, and you can, use whatever notation you think is suitable. It's your skill as an architect to know what notation is suitable, and you can choose whichever notation you need without having to log in again or change meta model or whatever. So there is value in both approaches depending on the use case you are in, depending on your situation, on the problem. But for those players and users who are already very productive using diagramming, a diagramming tool is interesting. Another aspect to end up the thinking on this question in particular is that some players in different areas, like in GRC, for example, governance, risk, and compliance, sometimes would like to have mapping capabilities, for example, to map risks on top of processes. However, they don't have the diagramming capability, in which case they can OEM the diagramming capability, which is also what we offer with GenMyModel, which has been OEM'd in several other solutions in the past. So that's it for drawing, modeling versus analytical. And that naturally leads us to, use cases, personas. Are there EA personas at all? Well, the enterprise architect tended to be, this character in its ivory tower. Actually, with the multiplication of roles, the enterprise architects' capabilities have had to change, their skills and their relationships have had to change, and their stakeholders are more and more diverse. So yes, I'd say, of course, there are personas, there are user profiles, different user profiles who may need different capabilities and different types of tools or reports as it comes to when it comes to enterprise architecture. So, let's try to list simple type of personas. The first I'm thinking of is the organizational expert, the strategist or the process architect, and even the IT architect who discovered that they need to scale up to a more robust modeling tool. Typically the type of user who uses drawing or office automation tools to build documents and to start a project, and well, eventually when they want to reuse certain artifacts, to reuse a concept, to reuse a model, they discover that it is very painful if you built a model in PowerPoint to insert it in Word. Even if it's somewhat integrated, you're going to have it's going to be a mess. Quickly, you're going to have documents all over the place. You're not going to be able to sort that out, etc. So you need something else. You need something that has a repository. So that's the first persona in terms of maturity, those who are using drawing tools or office automation tools and who discover that they need more than that. Then you have the business analyst who is interested in better understanding how the company works, what processes are going on in the company, and what change scenarios could be explored, right? In that case, a schema, a diagram, is worth 1,000 words, as the saying goes. And that's true, but provided the schema or this diagram is consistent and relies on a database of some sort. So again, you couldn't do that with just a drawing tool or just office automation. And finally, to name a third type of persona, you have people who are more IT driven. When the needs come from the IT, for example, application and data architects may have to change an IT component, but they don't know where to start digging. They don't know what project happened in the past, what was the previous project that changed this particular component, what standards are in use, where the documentation can possibly be, and what requirements have been gathered to start the work. Does that sound any familiar? I assume so. So, in short, EA professionals need to get rid of the traditional complexity conveyed by the desktop tools inheritance, and they need to use tools that are easy to learn, easy to adopt, and that streamline their processes and make them more agile in their enterprise architecture endeavor. Right? That's the message we wanted to pass regarding the persona. So yes, the tools can be adapted to the roles, and there are roles that are worth taking care of because they have different needs inside all the EA capabilities that can be offered by vendors. Next question is, well, in this therefore crowded market, and there are many EA players, if you dig a little bit, if you look at the Gartner's and Forrester's analysis, market analysis, you see that there are many players, and when you look at Gartner and Forrester, you only see the top of the iceberg, the emerged part of the iceberg, but there are plenty of players. So how come there is, room for new players, and how do these new players differentiate? Which is a nice question we have often as Axelians, because we are regarded as a new player a new kid on the block, as we used to say in English. So how do the newcomers differentiate from other vendors? How, and is it easy to differentiate given that there is such a crowded market? Well, if you look carefully, finally you'll notice that there are differentiations that are important to users. First, it's the easy access to all users and role, easiness, user-friendliness. And when you look at the tools, if you take this as a criteria, you're going to quickly come to a very tiny shortlist. Some in the past used complexity as a way to sell. It's not the case anymore. Today, people are expecting simplicity, even in EA, even for modeling. Silent and effortless documentation, which I mentioned before, is also a strong differentiator, right? It's simple in some tools, including in ours. When designers do the design, silently and effortlessly in the background, the system generates a website that can be a documentation website that can be embedded in any third-party tool like Atlassian Confluence, for example, to name a very famous one. And you can embed the documentation automatically and circulate it automatically to those users who would like to read the documentation. And finally, there is this triptych that is only available in modern recent tools, which is the combination of the support of collaboration, the support of modeling and not just drawing, as I said before, and finally, the fact that you support multi-standards and that you're not logged in a particular notation. So that, in my opinion, helps differentiate newcomers from older EA players. Another important point, as you can guess, and you could see me coming, it's the pricing, of course. Pricing, I'm sure people around have spent many years digging the EA market and discovered that there are many pricing models around, and that, of course, there has been a significant change over the past 5 years for those players who had to turn to a SaaS model and to leverage the capabilities of the cloud architecture for, multi-tenants, etc. So, do alternative pricing models take hold compared to the old on-premise pricing model? How should a new vendor price their product, and what about that model makes it more attractive to potential customers? Well, of course, you cannot put a tool which is supposed to be attractive to the market and raise a barrier that would be the price. So I'm just talking from experience with Axeliance. What we've done recently is to lower the price, betting that the volume would balance out the price decrease, and it was the right thing to do, really. It's most vendors, and it is the case of Axeliance, first offer a free trial or a very cheap trial mode that allows users to understand whether what's in the tool matches their needs, right? So they can have a good feeling, a good understanding of what it is to use the tool and whether the tool is able to match their use cases and situations. Then we offer an affordable team plan, which is, when you start working in teams, maybe small teams, you need to have an affordable configuration, an affordable plan that allows you to work in teams and complete, the first 5-10 projects that will allow you to feel at ease in the tool, and then to maybe escalate to the third level in the pricing model, which is the enterprise-wide license. So at Axeliance, with the GenMy model product, we offer these 3 levels: free, small teams, say, from 20 to 100, and then escalating to the enterprise-wide plan, which allows bigger or more mature organization to adopt the tool more widely, right? The message, again, we want to pass is when you select a tool, make sure that you select a tool you can grow into, a tool that will match small configurations, but that doesn't require you to change everything to escalate to, to scale up to bigger organizations and bigger spectrum covered in the enterprise. Finally, again, is there room for young EA players? Well, again, we said on a past question that the market was dying. Well, no. As you see, there are new players, and Axeliance is not the only one new player. There are players entering this market as we speak, maybe, and we're not aware. So in a crowded market, again, there seems to be room for young players like we are. So how come? Well, you know, if you look at the market differently, if we don't look at the market from a vendor perspective, but from a user perspective, finally, there are many new situations in which EA can apply, right? Business transformation, of course, is a cliche one, but there are other cases. For example, you know, monitoring floods is something for which EA may play a role. So, you know, I'd look at the other end of the market, looking at the users, and for sure we see that there is room in the market for new personas, new users, new roles, and hence new use cases. So that's what we look at, and the reason we are here in the market, right? For example, talking about new users or new roles, we'll be releasing a SysML v2 for GenMy model, a flavor version of GenMy model supporting SysML version 2 to support system engineering. That's a particular use case of modeling, of course, systems engineering. It will be better tested in October. So that's an example of innovation, an example of when you look sharply at the market, you can detect that there is a role, there is a persona who may be interested in what you do, and if you can do it quick, you can catch this market segment. So is there room for EA players and young EA players? I'd say yes, for those who, you know, watch the market closely. And that's my last question, and that's it. We can turn to the conclusion. I hope the questions were of interest to the audience, and of course, I'm open to answer even more questions now. Thank you, everyone.
Very, very good, Jean-Marie. You know, very interesting viewpoints here, and we have a number of questions that came up during your talk. And the very first one was about, you know, the dying market for enterprise architecture. I think you got people's attentions on that. And so, what do you see today? I know you already covered it, but some of the questions were about that viewpoint. There is, you know, the previous speaker talked about this failed avalanche of transformation projects and the role that enterprise architecture may play or not in that. And how do you see the enterprise architecture market as it is today? And what if you are going to predict how it's going to evolve, at least in the next 6 months to the next 18 months? What do you see as developments on enterprise architecture that may be important in the marketplace?
Right. Yes, you could even narrow down this phenomena to enterprise architecture initiatives that are failing. And I think that a recent survey conducted by Mark McGregor showed that 64% of EA initiatives fail for a various set of reasons. And I think one of the reasons is that for some reason that is difficult to explain, enterprise architects have difficulty getting the budget and convincing of the value of EA in an organization. So I'd say that one of the trends is to see how enterprise architects are going to be more agile and turn to business users to engage directly with them, to understand what their need is, and to select what is best to do to demonstrate that they can deliver value quickly on stringent issues, right? Let's take a simple example. You want to optimize your IT assets. And in doing so, you're going to sort your IT assets by decreasing cost, for example. And what you may want to do is to tackle the first one, saying that's my most costly application. I want to get rid of it somehow. I'm going to move it to the cloud. Okay, but what part of the business does this application or this IT component support exactly? Which users? How are you going to proceed to explain, etc.? So when you pull one thread, there are many things that come, you know, at the end of the thread. And I think that one of the trends and one of the significant things that you may want to observe is to see if the vendors on the one hand and enterprise architects by and large manage to really turn to the business, listen to the business, to address business issues first. That could be an interesting thing to watch in the coming months and years.
That's very good, and I want to get back to that a little bit later on the personas that you talked about of enterprise architects. But I want to stay on technology a little bit longer with you, because there are some questions related to technology. As you identify in your talk, we have a lot of competing technologies out there, different approaches to enterprise architecture. From a technological standpoint, is there anything new in the last 18 months or so that has emerged? Because we have certainly experienced an acceleration of digital transformations, and enterprise architecture has become more prominent as a result of that. Have the technologies mature or evolved in the last 18 months in any meaningful way, or you think it's a continuous repackaging of old technologies?
No, I think there have been significant changes, particularly first of all, the ability to support collaborative work. But as we know, the pandemic enforced to be able to collaborate from the distance, right, from home. So collaborative capabilities become much more important today than they were in the past. And users have adopted them and have made them become mainstream finally. That's interesting, an interesting point. And I think that those vendors who manage to leverage the collaborative capabilities, and that selects them, I mean, it sort of sorts out the market, because of course the veteran players who come with, you know, desktop tools have difficulties, to say it with an understatement, supporting collaboration. So online tools allow easy, open collaboration much more easily than old tools could do. That's one point. Second point is, you know, the multiplication of devices. You know, there are many domains in which you build the mobile component of an app before even building the desktop one, right? And I think that could apply to EA, particularly for those vendors who have an analytic approach. You may want to consult an EA-related report on your mobile, on your tablet. So the mobile components become much more important today than they were before. They allow mobility, and either because you're home, or because you're abroad, or because you're outside of the office doing something, and that you need to intervene at some point in a completely, so to speak, dismantled process, in a non-linear process, well, having a device from which you can do nearly everything, maybe not modeling yet, because, you know, modeling on a small screen may be a pain, but at least, you know, consulting a report, validating a thing, moving something to the next step in a workflow. These are the typical things you can do with mobile devices, and I would see the support of mobility as being an interesting evolution in the EA market tomorrow.
That's very, very good. A very important point you identified there with collaboration and mobility. And I think that we may have just seen the beginning of that, especially on collaboration. I think the tools allowed us to connect, not necessarily collaborate very effectively, but certainly connect. And you know, this here is an environment that exemplifies that type of connection there that became enhanced throughout the pandemic. Let me switch gears to questions related to the value of enterprise architecture. You know, it's interesting because, you know, we're talking to an audience that's knowledgeable and they understand enterprise architecture. But when you get into the business side of organizations, they don't even know what enterprise architecture is and what it means. It sounds like some highly technical guy in the back that's kind of like making sure that the applications are working. And really, from a business standpoint, most businesses are looking at it just, I just don't want to happen to us what happened to Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp yesterday. That is the job of an enterprise architect, and someone at Facebook is crying today because of what happened yesterday. So the question is, how do you measure enterprise architecture from a business value standpoint, and how can we communicate that value more effectively to business leaders without sounding too techy?
Yes, that's a question from always, if I may say, and that's interesting that this question is still running and will still for a while. You're right. I think that enterprise architects think about enterprise architecture in enterprise architecture terms, right? They are sort of locked in this mental model of EA. So if they get out of this mental model and go outside and adopt sort of what some call an outside-in approach, they would look outside of the company, look at your users, look at your customers. What do they need, right? Where do they suffer? Where do they complain from your offering? Talk to the business users without preconceived ideas, without the preconceived idea that there will be an IT solution of some sort matching this need. Listen to business users and then connect the dots, as the person from Linux was saying. Connect the dots, meaning manage to understand the consequences and the cause to consequences, the causality between an event outside, a customer complaining, a customer expressing a need, a customer striving to catch one part of your offering, and then jumping to competition at some point because finally it's too difficult to buy your product, for example. If this is the case, maybe the architect can help somehow. But first, the architect needs to have in mind that he needs to speak in business terms. He doesn't need to pull the users, pull the business people inside EA to EA-ize them, if I may use this non-existing word. But on the contrary, make sure they can understand the business, they can speak the business language, and then come with a solution. So I think, to simply answer this, I think that if an enterprise architect wants to explain the value, the best thing to do is to understand the issues outside and to deliver a solution for an issue. And then it's going to be the users, it's going to be the customers, it's going to be their stakeholders who will be commenting on the value, and not the enterprise architects having to demonstrate it. Is that clear?
That's very good. Those are very good insights, and appreciate that. To follow up on that, if we start looking at use cases for enterprise architecture, are there any that come to mind that seem to have a good value creation, aspect to it? That use cases that may have maybe old use cases or emerging use cases that you think are good use cases to start with, maybe to show that value creation? What are some of maybe examples of value creation EA use cases?
Yes, good question. I'd see two, just to make the answer as short as possible. I'd see two. One is business oriented, the other is IT oriented. The business oriented one would be, we need to change something, right? We need to go digital. We need to, reduce resources on a certain activity because we've merged two activities, we've merged two companies, a very classical situation, right? How do we do this? How do we manage to better understand how we perform the work and if we need to perform it differently? Well, in this case, you need to better understand your business. You need a map of some sort. And one of the things you may want to understand is who does what in the organization. You're likely to need a process map. So simply, if you want to build a process map, again, you could use PowerPoint, you could use a tool like Visio, just a drawing tool. But if you do so, you're going to have documents all over the place. You may want to use a simple notation, easy to adopt, build business process diagrams that in addition are much more practical to communicate with users than, a heavy text, etc. And simply start mapping the process. If you pay the effort of mapping processes with process owners, you are not going to spend 5 minutes without raising an issue and finding some way to solve it. So that's what is interesting about using a tool, is that it will accelerate your your journey to value or to solving an issue and finding the best way to solve an issue. That's for the business part. For the IT part, again, there is a simple and very common situation where you want to reduce cost. Today, you want to reduce cost in moving to the cloud because you want to change the way you buy software as a company. You're going to buy service and not on-prem software because you're going to change the nature of the budget you allocate to this, right? So in doing so, again, you want to understand what first you want to map, you want to make an inventory of your IT assets, and ask this question to your CIO: what is your inventory asset? Can you give me a list of your applications? And it's often a tricky question because it's a simple question to which it's very difficult to answer strangely. So EA can help build the inventory. And in addition, shortly after, EA can help you link any asset, IT asset component to the business part that it supports. And when you have this, well, you have, what I would call a fairly good map of the organization. And when you remove an app, say, or when you move an app to the cloud, you understand the impact on the business, on the users inside the company, etc. So that's another simple IT-driven use case that tackles IT cost reduction.
Jean-Marie, those are two excellent use cases. I hope everybody listened to you carefully. And for those of you who are going to be watching this on after, not live, after the event, rewind and listen to what he just said, because there's a lot of experience and depth on what was said there, and a lot of value that you can learn from those use cases. I can attest, by leading transformation in large organizations, that we have used those two use cases over and over again to create value, and they are real issues in organizations that need to be addressed. To wrap up here, one final question. A good enterprise architect is technically sound. What does a great enterprise architect look like?
I have no idea. He can look like so many of us, I'd say. So, what are the top qualities of an enterprise architect? I think it's listening. Listening more than he would speak, which is the contrary that I did today. Sorry, apologies for that. But I was a presenter, so I have excuses. No, I'd say yes, listening is one of the top quality. Being able to collaborate with a very diverse set of stakeholders. So, disentangling from this preconceived IT-driven type of personality and being able to adapt to any business-driven situation would be, I think, one additional quality. And finally, one of the top quality, which is, I think, known to be missed by enterprise architects, is the ability to communicate, and to communicate easily across the organization. So these are the three qualities I would expect to find in an enterprise architect today.
That sounds like someone who would become indispensable to any organization. Jean-Marie, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your expertise. It's a real gift to our global audience to listen directly from an industry leader like you. Thank you again so much for your generosity.
Thank you so much, Jose. Chat soon.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Jean-Marie Zirano, a great industry leader directly from Lyon, France, Chief Marketing Officer at Excellence, telling us the path towards enduring greatness when it comes to enterprise architecture. We're going to be taking a break now, and at the top of the hour, we're going to come up with another tremendous leader of enterprise architecture. And I'm talking about Keith Van, who is the Chief Digital Officer for refined technologies. Kip is going to talk to us about field-enabled operators. We're going to get into the practical side and the real application now in the energy industry, and how field-enabled operators are transforming aspects of the energy industry. And we're going to get into the details on how that's done by one of the great industry leaders, and that's creating value today with these applications. We're going to look behind the curtains and see how that is done from a true practitioner. So for now, please take a break. I'll see you back at the top of the hour.